The restaurant was one of those places you only visit on special occasions: dim lighting, flickering candles, soft jazz floating in the background. I had booked the table weeks in advance. 6 years of marriage to Emily deserved a night without phones, deadlines, or distractions. Just us. I was halfway through telling her a story about something that happened at work when I noticed her eyes shift, past my shoulder, toward the entrance. At first, I thought she was just people watching. But then I saw her posture change. She sat up straighter, her hand pausing mid-air, wine glass hovering just inches from her lips. And then he walked in. Tall, confident, and moving with a purpose that made my stomach knot. His eyes locked on Emily like a hawk spotting prey. Before I could ask, "Do you know him?" he was already at our table. Without acknowledging me, he reached for Emily's hand, the hand that, moments ago, had been resting in mine, and lifted it gently, almost reverently. His lips didn't touch her skin, but his smirk. God, that smirk was worse than any kiss. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't polite. It was the look of a man who knew something I didn't. "Emily," he said, his voice low, almost teasing. "It's been a long time." Her fingers stiffened in his grasp. I looked at her face, expecting confusion or annoyance, but what I saw was something far more complicated, a tangled mix of shock, guilt, and something I couldn't quite name. I froze. My mind scrambled for an explanation. A college friend? An ex? A coworker? Whoever he was, he clearly wasn't a stranger. Emily pulled her hand back, slowly, like she wasn't sure if she wanted to let go. "Aaron," she whispered, her voice barely above the hum of the music. Aaron. I'd never heard the name before. Not once in the 6 years we'd been together. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I thought I knew every chapter of my wife's past. That night, I learned there were entire books missing. I forced a polite smile and extended my hand, but he didn't take it. Instead, he pulled out the empty chair beside Emily, my wife, and sat down, uninvited. The air around us felt heavier, the music suddenly too soft, like it had been swallowed by the tension building at our table. My chest tightened. We'd come here to celebrate. Instead, I had the sickening feeling that I was about to watch my marriage start to unravel, one word at a time. "My name's Daniel. I'm 34, work in finance, and I've always been the type of guy who believes that stability is the backbone of a good marriage. Emily, my wife, is 32. When we met, she had this warmth about her, the kind that could melt your guard before you even realized you had one. She worked in marketing, thrived in fast-paced environments, and loved a good challenge. I guess that's what drew me to her. In the beginning, everything felt effortless. We had spontaneous road trips, late-night conversations that bled into sunrise, and an unspoken certainty that we were each other's person. But somewhere along the way, life began to settle into patterns. The kind that are safe, but also, maybe, a little too safe. Over the last few months, I started noticing little things. Emily's phone, once left casually on the counter, was now always face down. She'd step into another room to take calls. Her evening stretched later and later at the office, and when she came home, she seemed elsewhere. I'd ask about her day, and she'd give me the edited, polite version. I told myself it was work stress. Her firm had been pushing a big campaign, and late nights came with the territory. I tried to ignore the unease gnawing at me. After all, Emily had never given me a reason not to trust her. Still, there were moments when I caught her staring off, her wine glass untouched, eyes fixed on some point far beyond the walls of our home. Once, when I asked what she was thinking, she smiled faintly and said, "Some people from my past don't deserve to find me." I didn't push. I wish I had. Looking back, maybe that was the first crack, not in her, not even in us, but in the way I assumed the past could stay buried just because you wanted it to. That's why I planned the dinner, to pull her out of whatever shadow she seemed to be walking in. An evening where we could laugh like we used to, toast to our 6 years together, and maybe remember why we chose each other. What I didn't know was that the man who would walk into that restaurant, the one whose name I'd never heard before, had been holding on to a chapter of Emily's life she'd hoped was closed forever. And when he sat down beside her that night, I felt the unspoken truth settle heavy in my chest. Our marriage was about to face something I wasn't sure we could survive. Aaron didn't ask if he could sit down. He just did, sliding into the empty chair beside Emily like it belonged to him, his arm resting casually on the back as if he'd claimed the space, and her, years ago. "It's been a long time, he said, his voice low but laced with a smug familiarity. "Did you miss me?" Her wine glass rattled slightly against the table as she set it down. Underneath, I could see her hands in her lap, fingers twisting into themselves, knuckles white. I waited for her to say something. Anything. But the silence stretched on like a rope pulled tight. My patience snapped. "Who the hell are you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Aaron finally turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw his eyes, cool, calculating, and utterly unimpressed. He leaned back in his chair, smirking like I was a kid interrupting grown-up talk. "I'm the guy who loved her before you did," he said slowly, almost savoring the words. Then, with a tilt of his head, "and maybe still does." The audacity hit me like a slap. I glanced at Emily, expecting her to correct him, to shut this down. Instead, she stared at the tablecloth as though the pattern might swallow her whole. Her lips pressed together like she was holding something back. Excuse me," she murmured suddenly, pushing her chair back. Without meeting my eyes, she slipped away toward the restroom, leaving me alone with him. Aaron didn't move. He didn't even look in her direction. His gaze was fixed on me now, like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. "You seem like a decent guy," he said, almost conversationally. "So I'm going to give you some advice. Don't ask her about me unless you're ready to hear the truth." "What truth?" I demanded. His smirk widened, but his tone dropped lower, colder. "She didn't tell you why she left me, did she?" Before I could respond, before I could grab him by the collar and demand answers, he stood. No rush, no guilt. Just calm, deliberate movements, like a man who knew he'd planted a seed that would grow whether I wanted it to or not. And then he walked away. I sat there, staring at the untouched plates between us, my pulse thudding in my ears. My wife's voice replayed in my mind, "Some people from my past don't deserve to find me." What had she meant? Had Emily cheated before me? Had she been running from something? Someone? Or worse, had she been running toward him all along? The drive home felt longer than it was. Streetlights slid past in silent intervals, casting pale stripes over Emily's face. She kept her gaze fixed out the passenger window, her hands clasped in her lap like if she loosened her grip, something might spill out. I waited for her to speak. When she didn't, I finally broke the silence. "Emily, what the hell was that?" She didn't look at me. "I can't talk about it tonight." The words were soft, but final. A closed door. We pulled into the driveway without another word. She went straight upstairs, and I stayed in the car for a while, letting the cold air bite at me, wondering what I'd just witnessed. The days that followed were worse than the dinner itself. Conversations became clipped. Her laughter, the kind that used to fill our kitchen, was gone. We moved around each other like polite strangers, each waiting for the other to make the first move. I couldn't stand it. If she wouldn't tell me, I'd find out myself. One night, while Emily was in the shower, I went into the attic to pull down a box I hadn't seen in years, one of the few she'd brought from her old apartment when we got married. I told myself I was just curious. Deep down, I knew better. Inside were pieces of a life I'd never been part of, postcards, letters, little souvenirs from trips I hadn't taken with her. And then I found them, photos. Dozens of them. Emily and Aaron. At the beach, in cafes, smiling like the world belonged to them. There was no mistaking it, they'd been in love. Deeply. But one picture stopped me cold. Emily sat on a bed in what looked like a hospital room. Her hair was pulled back, her skin pale. On her wrist was a thin white bracelet with her name on it. Aaron's arm was around her, his face pressed close, smiling. It wasn't the smile of a man visiting out of obligation. It was the smile of someone who believed he belonged there, at her side, in that moment. And I realized with a sick twist in my stomach, this wasn't just an old boyfriend. Aaron had been there for something life-changing. Something she'd never told me about. It happened 3 nights after I found the photos. Emily had been pacing in the living room for nearly an hour, her bare feet whispering against the hardwood floor. I sat on the couch, the box from the attic between us, its contents spilling out like evidence in a trial neither of us wanted to have. She stopped finally, arms wrapped around herself. "You went through my things." "I had to," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "You left me no choice." "Who is he, Emily? Who is Aaron?" The name hit her like a blow. She sank into the armchair opposite me, her shoulders collapsing as if the fight had drained from her. "Aaron." She swallowed hard. "Years ago, we were engaged." I waited, but she didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on her hands, twisting the hem of her sweater. "It started out good," she continued. "He was charming, exciting. But over time, he changed. Or maybe I just started seeing him clearly. He was controlling. Everything I did had to be approved by him, where I went, who I saw, what I wore. He made me feel like my world existed only inside his boundaries." My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent. One night, we had a fight. Not our first, but our worst. I was pregnant. The word hit me like a punch to the chest. "I was about 3 months along," she whispered. "He wanted to know if the baby was his. He accused me of things I'd never even thought of." The yelling, it didn't stop. I left the apartment in the middle of the night, but on the stairs. Her voice cracked. I tripped. Fell hard. She wiped her eyes quickly, as if the tears were something she didn't want me to see. "The hospital bracelet, it was from that night. I lost the baby." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My anger at being kept in the dark collided with a fierce, almost primal urge to protect her. "I didn't tell you because I wanted to start fresh," she said quietly. "I didn't want Aaron to be a shadow over us. But if he's here now, it means he's been looking for me." Her words hung between us, heavy and suffocating. I didn't know what scared me more, the fact that this man had found her, or the fact that he clearly wasn't finished with her yet. A week later, I sent Aaron a message from an unlisted number. Short, simple, "Let's finish our conversation." Friday. 8 p.m. Cornerstone Cafe. When he walked in, that same smug grin was plastered on his face. The kind of grin that made you want to break something. He sat down across from me without a word, leaning back like he owned the room. "I was wondering when you'd grow a spine," he said. I didn't bother with small talk. I slid a manila envelope across the table. "You might want to open that." He glanced at it, unimpressed, then pulled out the contents. His expression shifted almost instantly. Inside was a copy of a legal restraining order, his name in bold print, and a thick stack of surveillance photos. Photos of him outside Emily's office. Photos of him sitting in a car parked down our street at 2 a.m. Photos of him at the restaurant that night, watching us before making his entrance. "You've been following her for months," I said. Not just her. I hired a private investigator. Turns out you have a history. 3 women. All filed harassment claims against you. 2 moved across the country to get away from you. I've already sent these to my attorney. The smirk faltered. You think you can scare me with? No, I cut in. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm ending this. You so much as breathe in her direction again, and you'll be facing charges that'll make your life very small, very fast.